What factors are considered when establishing in-stream flow numbers, and why are these flows important to fish and fish habitat?
Well, in-stream flow numbers are an attempt to provide good habitat for fish, and we focus on times and life stages and species that are particularly limited by flows. So the flows either limit habitat or limit access to habitat. And so much of what we do is to try to figure out what each fish species and life stage needs at each season, and which of those are most limiting to the species and life stage of interest. So it's a long process of doing that analysis.
And what are the consequences of inadequate flows?
Well, the consequences of inadequate flows are declining populations of those fish. Obviously, stream flows vary, and in-stream flows do not make those flows happen, but they put they limit the degree to which human activities reduce the flows, and that's really it. So it's a very limited effect that those have, as opposed to something that, it sounds rather sweeping, setting in stream flows, but nature still provides the water or doesn't provide the water, and it's a matter of how much of the water that nature provides do people take out. So droughts will still happen, floods will still happen. It's just that if you're having a drought, it can constrain the amount to which we make that drought worse.
Do we need to go back over the parts where he was talking about the access to the different areas they need and the access to the food?
Okay, let's try that once more. And then...
Okay. So when we're talking about consequences, are we talking about consequences to fish health, fish death, both?
We're talking primarily about consequences to the fish population if fish can't get into an area that they need to get to spawn, then that area is wasted in terms of the fish. So when we're talking about summer and fall flows for migration, then we're talking about can they or can they not get to where they need to get to in order to carry out the rest of their life history. And if not, then they get crowded into an area, and it will be very low in productivity. And the other area will be, it's like, I don't know, having a pasture with no cows in it. You won't grow any, you may have great pasture up there, but if your cows can't get there, you won't have any beef production or milk production or whatever you're looking for. And same with the salmon and the migration flows. The other thing with once the fish get up in there, they then carry out a number of phases of their life history in those areas. And going back to the cow pasture analogy, if you have, say, 10 acres, you can grow a certain number of cattle. If it's 10 acres of bare rock and sand, well, even though it's 10 acres, you're still not going to grow cattle there. If it's 10 acres of lush grasses and forbs that are good, nutritious feed, then you can grow lots. And so a lot of what we're looking at is how do you ensure that the flows are such that the habitat is that high quality, so that the area is high quality and will produce fish.
Can you comment again on the issue with the crowding and the ability to get food, and then what you'd see when the ability to get food becomes more limited, and how that die-off might not necessarily be a big noticeable event?
Yes, the fish are feeding in the current as insects are swept to them. They need a certain amount of current there. They don't want too much current, because if they have to work too hard in it, then all their energy gets expended in getting the food and they don't get any growth. They can't be too crowded. If they're too crowded, then there's not enough food for all. If conditions are not very favorable, then growth will be slow, whether it's because of not enough food or too much competition. And so if you have poor growth, then some of the fish will leave trying to find someplace else, and they'll be more vulnerable to predators, whether it's mergansers or cormorants or whatever, other fish, or they won't survive. But you won't see, you will not see a bunch of dead fish. It will be a gradual loss. The fish won't grow as fast. They may not really grow much at all in length. But unless you are looking at it with some, measuring individual fish and looking at some of the indicators that fisheries biologists use on what constitutes a healthy fish of a certain size, you'd probably never notice it. And you just would see gradually fewer and fewer. And then during the winter, particularly, you wouldn't notice it, but there would just be fewer going out. So that die-off would occur, but it would be just very gradual.
So the casual observer looking at the stream wouldn't see a difference, but there would be a difference.
Yes, and we see that when we have smolt traps counting the number of smolts going out. That's where we get that kind of a response. You have to do that.
Okay, good. Great, Hal, thanks.
That was long, huh?
Yeah. The questions